In okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Mason, and I am the Senate President. Thank you for attending our Senate meeting, and welcome to our guests today. As always, everyone can follow the agenda on the Senate website, and I will do my best to facilitate a meaningful, productive meeting in which participants can be heard and included. As a Senate member, when you want to participate, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. You will be placed in the queue for speakers, and I will call on you and let you know when you have the floor. With that said, I call this meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. So first we have my remarks. We have a very full agenda today, so I will do my best to try to keep us on track. First, however, I want to share that I, like many of you, feel consistently pulled in multiple directions this year so far. How to respond to the heartbreaking and maddening national news, how to effectively support students in this time, but also how to deliver the content in my courses, grade student assignments, and meet my responsibilities to all my colleagues, including you. I want to say that I know it's hard to hold multiple spaces at once, but all I try to do is stay focused on the things right in front of me where I know I can make the most difference. For example, the UO Senate will be sponsoring an information session with the Division of Global Engagement, International Students and Scholar Services on Wednesday, February 11th from 12 to 1. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the flyer, and I'll also circulate it after this meeting today. Hold on. This event, this is going to be in the night browsing, the browsing room in the night library. And it's meant to share information and answer questions about critical issues facing our international migrant and dreamer students, faculty, and staff, and what type of training might be helpful moving forward. And I believe that training is going to be held later this term. This follows a Know Your Rights training in January um, uh, that was hosted online for students. I've posted the webinar link in the chat, so I'm going to do that right now. I have lots of links today, so I've been trying to keep up to date with everything. Hold on. Okay, just a second. I knew this was going to happen. So here's the link to the webinar that students may find useful in a Know Your Rights training. But first today, we want to also focus on the good work that our programs, faculty, and courses that are engaged in communities do. I've invited Professor Mark Schlossberg from the School of Planning, Public Policy, and Management to share with you one of the programs he directs, the Sustainable City Year program, which was mentioned at the last Board of Trustees meeting as an example of UO's social impact. Mark, welcome to the meeting, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's see if share works. You can see that? Yep, okay, see a head nod. So thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone for your service on behalf of all of us here at the university. It's great to be part of this. So I'm just going to give a really quick breakdown and overview with lots of slides in a short amount of time, visually energizing, about the Sustainable City Year program, a program that my guess is that some of you may have heard whispers of, but maybe not know exactly what it is. So I'm really happy to share it today. And just one sec. Okay. And so this program started actually in 2010 with a couple colleagues of mine and I. Nico Larco was architecture professor, and Robert Young, who was also a professor in 3PM at that time. And we were both frustrated and inspired by our students, and that's what started this program. We were inspired by the work that the students were turning into us at the end of our academic terms and the classes we were teaching, and we were frustrated that only we were the ones seeing their work, that their work really had applicability to the wider world, but the wider world didn't have access to it. So in 2010, we asked this very simple question, that what if we could connect existing courses like the ones we were teaching, taught by existing faculty, to a single city in Oregon over an academic year to work on projects identified by that city or community partner. And there was an observation behind this question. The three of us work in very applied disciplines, so we're used to working with cities, And when we would speak with our colleagues working in the public sector and local community, what we came to understand is that um, these city staff often lacked the capacity to meet the goals that their city councils and their public were demanding of them because everyone wants everything all at once, and there's only so much staff time to do it. That staff were generally educated in a different era, and they didn't have access to the latest best practice knowledge to do their work to improve their communities. And city staff are often de-incentivized to take risks because when they take risks, the public yells at them, and that's not very much fun. And on our side, at the university side, we noticed that we actually have excess capacity via our regular classes, as evidenced by the classes that we were talking about, that we were frustrated and inspired by. We have unlimited access to new knowledge. That's our role as universities and society. And we're actually an innovation seeking type of culture and body, and our students demand it of us all the time, in addition to the cutting edge research that we all do. And so what SCYP, the Sustainable City Year Program, is, it's a matchmaker between cities that need capacity and access to new knowledge and our classrooms taught by us as faculty and our students who want to push the envelope yesterday, how to match those two things together. And so we might think, in architecture, city planning, or business, these very applied disciplines, we do project-based learning all the time, but over the years with SCYP, we've had classes from those disciplines, but many others across campus morph some of their work in their regular classes to do applied, practical, meaningful work for community while also deepening their learning of the discipline and the courses that they're taking. So many different classes across multiple schools and colleges across campus. It's really quite amazing. And also pretty amazing is we've even integrated courses from Portland State, Oregon State, and Eastern Oregon University as well, because this is based on the classes that us as individuals teach. Just like at those other institutions, there's great people teaching interesting things. So the difference of this program of SCYP versus maybe any of us here in this room that might teach an applied class is the scale of the offer of what we do. So in any given year, a typical year might be we might be working with one or maybe two cities in the state at a time, and we're focusing 500 or more students and their capacity and their work in the classroom to the needs in that community. So we might be engaging 20 or 25 faculty members, 25 to 35 courses in a single academic year, giving 50, 60,000 hours worth of effort on things that community says, hey, can you please help us figure out a new way to think about this challenge that we have in front of us. So it's really pretty cool. We work on all kinds of normal things that we all see in our communities where we live, right? Issues around affordable housing, economic development, or the reuse of aging infrastructure that our public sector might own. Looking at how do you revitalize areas that were like along a waterfront that used to be for industry, and now maybe they're more integrated into an urban life. How do you do that? How do you celebrate your community and the diversity and the interesting characters in your community that makes a place to live? How do we look at strengthening nonprofits? You might recognize someone in this slide as being your Senate president who teaches her classes as part of has taught her classes as part of the program. Looking at hydrology and toxin flow underground, looking at site in Oak Ridge recently, or fiscal analysis for agencies or for cities, money in, money out. How do we revamp tax code to align with community values? Reimagining public facilities, whole bunch of types of things. My personal favorite, because this is what I teach redesigning cities so more people can walk and bike more of the time. And so it's a great opportunity for my students to get applied experience working with community. We've worked, we founded in a pilot way, kind of experimental way in 2010. And since that time, we've worked all over the state. This is not, we are not the University of Eugene, we are the University of Oregon. And SCYP has worked in bigger cities for Oregon and dinky little towns, but really nice, robust places where people want to improve their quality of life, in the valley, on the other side of the Cascades, the south to the north. And most of the financial support for the program has actually come from the city partners and externally funded. Very little support has come thus far internally from the youth. So who cares and so what? the brief gist here is this is a really good example of us serving our state through work that we're already doing. Through this applied-based, project-based learning, our students are deepening their learning of whatever it is their academic discipline and their area of interest is. We're developing a huge amount of job readiness skills for our students because when you engage in projects where you're presenting to the city council and community members, you better know your stuff. So that's great skill set and it's great learning opportunities. And really, we're squeezing value out of the building blocks that already exist here at the university. We're just trying to squeeze value out of the classes, the students, and the faculty that are already part of what we're doing here as part of our mission at the university. So in that way, we're kind of reimagining the public university for serving the public good by finding a way to use our existing building blocks in new ways. And also, I hope everyone here can feel some pride that this program that was started, founded here, has now been adapted and has various iterations in place across 4 different continents. We've done a lot of training of others around the world. And it's a blast to actually be part of uh, this type of effort to help catalyze community change and just see students get so excited about topics that maybe when they started the class, they weren't so excited about. So that's the brief overview. If offline and you have a full agenda, I'm always happy to talk about this, answer questions. But my short-term ask for everyone here is if you know people in your disciplines, colleagues, that might be interested in figuring out how to turn one of their regular classes into an applied class, let me know. It turns out that cities actually want a lot of help with a lot of things, and we do a lot of things here. And so I'm always happy to have those conversations. So please send them my way. And yeah, that's the quick one. 20 slides, 5 minutes or something like that. So thank you very much for having me. And now you know about SCYP.
Thank you, Mark. I will say that I have that class picture that you showed. That was the group that I worked with up in Lapine, to help sort of reimagine their senior center up there and help support the development of a new strategic plan for them. So we've also done some projects with communities on developing sort of arts communities within their cities through nonprofit classes as well. So thank you. If you're interested in exploring ways to maybe work with SCYP as part of one of your classes, feel free to reach out to Mark, and he will be happy to point you in the right direction and start those conversations. So thank you. And if others have interesting ideas that you'd like, great things that are going on campus, please send them my way or to Edward's way, and we will try to find a way to fit you into an upcoming meeting. So to share some of the good work that our faculty are doing across the state and in our communities. So thank you. All right, so now it is time for ASUO updates. Senator Gill, you have the floor.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. ASUO, we've been quite busy. This last week, we hosted or actually in the future, we'll be hosting a Know Your Rights activism workshop this Friday from 4:30 to 6 in the Lise Crocher Lewis room. We'll have presentations from GTFF, and it'll be focused on campus organizing and activism in the face of widespread unrest and things that, we need to be rallying around and talking about. Medication Abortion Fair happened last week, co-hosted by YDSA. We had a great success. 11 student organizations presented, and we got 50 survey responses, 100 petition signatures in just 2 hours, on top of all the other organizing that's gone into that. We've also been working with Duck Rides to get another accessible bus, which has been purchased by Duck Rides. Now we're just trying to get it out there. And this Monday, we'll be going to the Capitol as ASUO with some other students to advocate for mandatory ICE notifications on campus, and open primaries here in the state of Oregon. And then in the Senate, we just passed our $11 million budget after 6 hours of deliberating on Saturday. So that feels very good to have done. We were able to set aside money for forensics while we continue to try to find a home and save them. We were able to expand the budgets for student orgs while they face tariffs and department cuts from like funding they used to get supplemented by, and a lot of departments as well. We were able to supplement a lot of funding from the CBA that students fought for last fall, and we were able to supplement some of the grants that departments have lost from the federal government. So overall successful budget, everybody's happy, and that's it from ASUL.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad to hear about the forensics program. So that was something that we tried to reach out about earlier this year. So I'm glad to hear that that's kind of moving forward until we're able to find a new home for them. So that's great.
Mhm. And we're still working on it. So if you know any
Yeah.
departments that would be
Yeah.
willing to house that, so please reach out.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Gill before we move on? Okay, thank you, Senator Gill. Right, so now it's time to approve the minutes. So are there any questions or changes to the minutes from our December 3rd or our last meeting? I guess what date was that, Bettina? I have the wrong date in the
January 14th.
January 14th meeting. Any updates to that meeting? All right, does anyone move to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, second? Or I guess, Melinda, you have your hand up. I guess that will count. Okay, thank you. So without objection, we will approve the minutes. Thank you very much. Next are the remarks from Provost Chris Long, who's joining us at this meeting. Provost Long, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Mason and Senator Gill, for your updates. It's good to be with you all on this amazingly sunny February day. In 1967, at a moment of tremendous upheaval in American life, Dr. Martin Luther King spoke these words to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." Dr. King understood the difference between true power and force. True power is rooted in love, alive to connection, and animated by justice. Force, by contrast, is coercion without care, strength without wisdom, and violence without end. Force compels, power transforms. Ours is a time riven by competing approaches to power. One conflates power with force, holding that the world is governed primarily by strength, by domination, and by coercion without conscience. The other recognizes true power in shared purpose, in the deep and enduring interconnectedness of things, in the possibilities that emerge when our individual callings find fulfillment in the cooperative activity of community life. This understanding of true power is not abstract. It shapes how we lead, how we make decisions, and how we create community together. I know that there is cynicism, both among faculty and staff, about the very idea of flourishing during these difficult times. And this is true both in our institution and I would say widely across the nation. But from my perspective, finding ways to put our commitments to flourishing into practice during periods of anxiety and disruption is critical if we're going to be serious about it. Flourishing is not about abundance or having everything we need. It's about meaning, growth, and deepening connection. And it can be created even in moments of grief, pain, and struggle, if we move through these challenges with integrity, care, and a sense of purpose. I raise this today because creating a culture of flourishing is central to our work together, and because later in the meeting, we'll hear more about the upcoming employee engagement survey. I'm asking for your support in making this a meaningful exercise. The survey is a concrete way for us to discern how well we're living our values in our interactions with one another, and to what degree our daily work supports our shared mission. We've sought to make the survey more accessible by shortening it and by framing the questions with faculty and staff work and priorities in mind. The survey is just one instrument in a larger composition. Ultimately, our deeper ongoing work here is rooted in dismantling the toxic culture of higher education that prevents us from doing our most ambitious and meaningful work. It's about establishing the University of Oregon as a place where care, inclusion, and well-being are recognized as the conditions that make excellence possible. I also want to talk with you briefly about the Higher Education Coordinating Commission's report on the report called Spending and Efficiency in Oregon's Public Universities. There's been a lot of conversation about the more controversial elements of that report, including institutional mergers, and more relevant for us, the concept that HEC might take a more active role in approving and reviewing academic programs. So let me be clear, I do not support this idea. Academic decisions are best made by those with expertise and local knowledge, by faculty who know their disciplines, their students, and the missions of their university. While other states have moved in this direction, that approach represents an imposition of authority rather than genuine partnership. However, I also believe this is a timely reminder that we need to continue our work at the institutional level on program review and effectiveness, and we will need the Senate's continued partnership in that effort, and I've been grateful for the work that we've been doing together in that regard. The most effective response to outside pressure is to demonstrate our own capacity for thoughtful self-governance. We can show the HEC that we already do this work rigorously and that we don't need external intervention. My experience serving as the co-chair of the HEC's Transfer Council as we work to establish a statewide approach to general education transfer has taught me that trusting relationships and honest dialogue can shift existing dynamics from confrontation to collaboration. This is the path I will pursue with the HEC and with our Oregon Public University partners as we respond to the HEC's recommendations. Finally, let me say a few words about the brutal actions by immigration and customs enforcement in Minneapolis and across the country. Many on our campus community are rightly outraged at how the federal administration is using ICE agents to assert an agenda of force and domination. We are appalled by the cold-blooded killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. After developments this weekend, there are also heightened concerns about further ICE deployments in Oregon and Eugene. I want to reiterate that to date, there have been no incidents of ICE coming to the University of Oregon's campus for the purpose of arresting or detaining any member of our community. Nevertheless, we are dedicated to providing a safe and supportive educational environment for all enrolled students, faculty, members, staff, and visitors, regardless of their immigration status. We will take robust steps to protect privacy and preserve access to education while continuing to operate within the bounds of federal and state law. We have made resources available to our community members so they know how to respond to potential enforcement action. As one example of those resources, in addition to what President Mason and Senator Gill have mentioned, there's an upcoming Dreamer Ally training being held on February 7th, organized by our Dreamers Working Group. And I look forward to this training myself and hope to see some of you there. In this dark hour, Let us not forget the words of Dr. King. Power without love is reckless and abusive. It is anemic, and it cannot endure. Force, however overwhelming it may appear in a given moment, is ultimately fragile. What endures is true power, animated by love and oriented to justice, the power to protect, to care, and to create community, even in the face of fear. This is the work we are called to do, and it is the work we will not abandon. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Long. Any comments or questions for Provost Long? Please use the raise your hand feature. Senator McKenna.
Thank you very much for those remarks. They're very powerful. And you said you were going to be working with the HEC. Are there also opportunities for you and other leadership roles to take that message to the general public in the state?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Aaron. I am definitely working with the HEC in the spaces that I have access to and trying to bring both the clarity that I just spoke with into those contexts, but also putting those commitments into practice in the work that I'm doing. What I mentioned about the Transfer Council is a perfect, I think, example of how I'm trying to model that, where the HEC really did kind of come forward with a pretty forceful charge to the Transfer Council without a whole lot of consultation with us. And so we were able to work with Ben and the HEC staff and Ken and the HEC staff to try to create the space for the Transfer Council to have some meaningful input into the charge that we were given. And that space has been actually open for us in January, February, and hopefully by March, we'll be able to get some input back to the HEC that will shape our work moving forward with general education. So that's the kind of thing that I'm really committed to. And I think, as you can hear from the way I framed that conversation, that's also a dynamic I'm committed to in conversation with you all in the Senate to create the conditions for meaningful input for us to work together to advance the mission of the university and make sure we're in a sustainable footing.
If I could, so I appreciate all of that. Are there also plans to make sure the general public understands that we already evaluate ourselves and look at programs, and they seem to think we don't do any of that? So I want to make sure the general public knows what we do.
Yes, I've been partnering with colleagues at the OPUs to make sure that is out there, and I appreciate the point you're making. I will try to think about some other ways potentially for us to be more proactive in doing that together. I think demonstrating the work that we all are doing in our universities to be responsible stewards of the resources we have is a critical part of what we'll need to do moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Senator Rosiak.
Thank you for those remarks. I just want to say, while rhetoric isn't everything, I appreciate the way in which you framed your comments about those policies and tying them to MLK's words and to the contemporary politics. I've not had a provost that was really did things like this in my entire career, and I enjoy that. That being said, I have a question that's sort of more practical. My sort of loose and uninformed impression was that when we formed a board of trustees and became somewhat separate from the larger Oregon University system, that HEC's reach and power over our programs was diminished, if not largely gone. So apparently that's not true. It might help others who are not informed, just like I am, to get a little bit of a briefer on why it is that at this particular moment, HEC would be trying to assert this, because it happens on the heels of the whole thing that we all went through this summer, where program was, sort of at risk of being eliminated, and now we see HEC trying to make these moves, and it just sort of feels like shark circling in ways that don't contribute to a sort of robust feeling of security out of which a trusting relationship and collaboration can be built. So maybe a little bit about the history, if you could offer us about why it is and what Heck's role is in regard to us, and and what connection, if any, there is between the challenges we faced last summer budget-wise and why Heck is doing what they're doing now.
Yes,
Provost Long, we have time on the schedule later to discuss just this.
Okay, let's
also,
let that.
but if we want to let
Trent's here.
Trent to
Yep.
just respond quickly, because there's a lot of moving pieces that are happening right now, so he can give a little bit of that context.
And hopefully you can hear me. I'm Trent Lutz. I'm the Executive Director of Government Community Relations and our State Affairs Director. Just really quickly, the HEC currently does not have that authority. They only have programmatic approval authority. So the provosts of all the universities get together, review programmatic offerings, that any new programmatic offerings after they come from through the process of our shared governance model for new things, and they review that and approve it. For the most part, if it comes with unanimous consent, it goes onto a consent agenda, and new programs are offered, and they have a touch of a review process only in new programs. The reason I think that they're looking into this is that they're with 7 public universities and 14 community colleges and other spaces. There's some real dynamics that are happening. I think we saw Southern Oregon University declare financial exigency this last summer. We saw them just in their board meeting this year talk about how they don't currently have a path to payroll without additional funding, even in the next few months. And so they are in a place where there's been a broader conversation about what is there competition? Should there be competition? What does that look like, and what are the impacts of those pieces? And so there is a bill that is looking to study this further and to do it. It's not something the legislature is currently taking up as current action as far as implementing something like this, but they are looking to study it further. We are having a lot of legislative conversations. I've been in meetings all for the last 3 days as session has gotten started with all of the committee members and sponsors of the bill to talk about this. But the brief history is they don't have this authority. I think it's broader scope, believing that there might be some level of competition happening between our universities.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, we'll have some more discussion about this later, because we've prepared a resolution on these points for all of us to consider. So thanks, Trent. Senator Mossberg, do you have a question for the provost?
You're muted, Barbara.
Barbara, you're muted still.
Oh, you're still muted.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're good now.
Thank you. I also really would like you to take your approach to any meeting, but to any issue on the road, in providing a kind of new model, as you say, for how we look at our issues. And I particularly value the rhetorical and moral framework that you gave, specifically linking it to conditions that make excellence a possibility. And I think that that is very powerful way to connect the moral urgency and exigency of your approach here of leadership on our behalf.
I appreciate that, Barbara, and I'm grateful for the chance here with you all to give me the space to work on this language and to continue to refine it, and of course, always to hold me accountable to trying to live it out as best I can. We're constantly working on that as well, you know. But I really appreciate the chance to bring these words forward and to try to enact them in the spaces where I have the authority and the power the true power, hopefully, to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and our last question, Senator Bars.
Senator Bars, it always feels so official.
Sounds good.
As with everybody else, I do want to take a moment and thank you for your comments about everything that's been happening. My question is more geared towards the employee engagement survey. And I'm not sure if you're the appropriate person to ask this question to, so I do preemptively apologize. I'm a classified staff senator. There's a large portion of classified staff that don't have access daily to a computer or to a dedicated workstation. And since this is going to be a virtual survey where people are given a link, I'm just curious if you know of any work that's being done to help provide either a laptop or a tablet to those employees who don't have that workstation.
Great. Thank you, Senator Bars. I see Kai is going to raise her hand there. I was going to offer Edward's desktop up, but that's not seeming to be working. Maybe he has a laptop that he's ready to loan out. I'm being facetious there. So Kai, I know you've probably given some thought to this.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I'm happy to talk more about it later in the meeting as well. But the short answer is yes, we have reached out to our units that we know have a number of employees who don't primarily work at a workstation in front of a computer. And so we're making arrangements with units to, for example, one of our units is putting together an iPad cart that will be available for people to, access their iPads and be able to take the survey. The survey is also mobile and tablet friendly. So, there should be multiple ways for people to be able to take the survey. And we're also offering, if there is anybody who feels like I don't have access to a computer and I haven't been able to figure out within my unit what my resources are, that, any of those employees could reach out to University HR and we would help make that connection just to make sure that, access isn't a barrier for anyone in taking the survey.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kaya, and thank you, Provost Long, for your remarks today. They were the right, needed, and necessary words for me to hear. So I really appreciate you sharing with us. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I didn't realize how much I needed to write them myself. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so now we move into the business part of the meeting. Today we start with a vote on the revised faculty fellowships policy that we discussed at the last meeting. Katie Krieger, our interim director of faculty personnel and policy, will be here in case there are any questions. Can Sandy or Bettina put up the motion on the screen? You can also link to it through the agenda, which I will post here for you.
We'll put it
in
up.
the chat. Okay. So basically, this new policy allows for us to revise a 30-year-old policy that regarding our ability to take fellowships and how payment works in those cases and how one would access, identify your eligibility and access these benefits. So the thing that I remember from Katie's presentation last week is that this is basically just codifying and clarifying what has been the UO practice for the last couple decades. And then Bettina is getting this up right now, so we'll have a chance to look at it. Are there any final questions or comments on this policy? I believe Katie did make some, not on this one. It was the next one that we'll talk about, that she made some changes. Any comments or questions on this policy?
Bettina, whatever you're showing is not sharing.
Yeah, Bettina, we just get the black screen. It's not loading.
I can
share my screen too. Okay. Hold on. So this is the motion that we're voting on. I'm gonna see if this will load. Hold on.
Katie, can you hear us? Did your computer go dead or something? Oh, we got it. Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's it. Okay. So this is the motion that just basically says we support the revised policy. And then this is the actual policy that is that we discussed and reviewed last week. This also had gone through the executive committee the week before our last meeting. So any questions or comments on this? I think Bettina's computer may have frozen. Oh. Okay, so seeing no questions, I wanted to see if there is a motion to vote on this policy.
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay,
Third.
great. Any questions or discussion? Okay, so hearing none, I call the question. So if you'd like to vote in support of this revision, please enter your vote into the chat.
Yeah, the motion has enough votes to pass. So it is passed. We'll get the totals counted soon.
Great. All right. So next, Katie would like to introduce another revised policy, and she's here to present this to us for consideration and discussion. This one is regarding our emirate or retired faculty policy. We had a good discussion on this in executive committee last week, and she made some changes that will be reflected in the version she shares with us today. So Katie, you now have the floor.
Excellent, thank you. I will share the red line as we walk through this. Okay, so as President Mason mentioned, we are back to talk about a new policy and revising it. This policy was worked on back in 2022 to create an additional title of emirate so that it was more inclusive, it was gender neutral, and kind of matched with inclusive language standards when it came to pronouns. But what was not done was then threading that through all the way in the policy. So even though we allow emirate, emerita, and emeritus, there was exclusionary language of his, her in the actual policy. So that was the first change, just getting the general spirit in alignment with the actual change that was made back in 2022. We also wanted to come through the policy and make it clear that emirate, emerita, or emeritus status is applicable to tenured or career faculty. So there were some questions about career faculty being able to use this if they're retiring with merit and meet the requirements. The answer is of course, and so we wanted to make that very clear in the policy language in section A here. We then removed an arbitrary clause that had to do with December 2014. This related to some old processes and delineations between retirement groups. It doesn't apply anymore, so we took that out so it's nice and crisp and folks don't get hung up on that particular issue anymore. We then wanted to show where the title would be appended for faculty. So there were some questions about, well, if I retire as an assistant or an associate teaching professor, what does that look like? And so we've clarified how they can add it to their title as an emirate, emeritus, or emerita. And this also includes like senior librarian, for example. So instead of using professor emirate, they would do senior librarian emirate. So it kind of clears that up for folks as well if they have a different title when they retire from the institution. We did, after talking with Senate Exec, clarify that in order to withhold or withdraw emirate status, that these would be the reasons. So we had good cause, and then there were some specifications in the old policy that weren't applicable to every faculty member. This, we went to the collective bargaining agreement as well as to some of our other employee language, and we reflected the same kind of definition here. So that's where we have adopted that. I want to thank Senate Exec for pointing that out and saying, hey, can we get a little bit more crisp on why we would withhold or withdraw this particular status. It also implies that there is a process here. It can look a little bit different depending on the case, but the provost or their designee would then consult with the parties involved. So a good example is research fraud. That would probably involve HR offices and OVPRI, so those would be the consultants. For a different case, we might see OEOA, Employee Labor Relations General Counsel. So we didn't want to define who exactly would be consulted because that list changes depending on the case, and it should. We want these particular issues to be looked at with the correct folks who have a business need to be in the conversation, instead of just automatically bringing everyone into this conversation, or only allowing HR, for example, to weigh in. If it's a research case, OVPRI should be there discussing with the provost as well. In section B, we wanted to clarify participation in faculty governance. So this has to do with how Emirate faculty engage with Senate, statutory faculty assembly, and in their unit. We want to turn to Constitution and bylaws for Senate. It clearly states how Emirate faculty can engage, what they're allowed to do, if they're allowed to bring motions, vote, etc. So we want to turn to those materials, and we've linked that at the bottom of this policy. And then there were a lot of questions about unit policies stating very clearly how faculty with Emirate status are allowed to engage in shared governance in their unit. And so we didn't want this policy to override or to conflict with what unit policy already creates for Emirate faculty. And those policies are created by faculty for faculty. So it's a little more boots on the ground and specific to the faculty experience. So in this policy, we defer to the unit and how they've defined how Emirate faculty can engage with shared governance. In section D, we have trimmed out some of the examples of privileges and benefits for our Emirate faculty. HR has a fantastic list. It is updated frequently. A really good example is that PE and Rec started doing a Monday yoga. That's open to Emirate faculty, but that's not something we want to open this policy up for revisions every single time a new benefit or privilege is added or changes. So we've deferred to the HR list. That's kept updated and very flexible. And of course, it provides the unit and the school and college where those Emirate faculty operate to really look at what's available in terms of space, in terms of benefits, and some things are tied to specific programs, even access to lab spaces, additional professional development funds, et cetera. And then just like all of our other policies, we've linked to relevant sources so folks can easily hop over, check out their department or unit policy, check out the Constitution and bylaws, and then of course, keep tabs on that benefits list when they do retire with merit.
Great, thank you, Katie. Are there any questions or comments on this? Senator Addington.
Hi, thanks. Is this term emirate, is it being created by this policy, or does it already exist and the policy is just
Yep, it already exists. That was a Senate work back in 2022. Yeah, I think it was proposed in 21 and approved in 2022.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Katie, for your work on this. We'll be voting on this at the next meeting. And if you do have any outstanding questions or comments that you'd like to have Katie address before we meet again, please feel free to share those or send them along to us, and we'll send them along to her. So thank you very much. We're slowly cleaning the house. So it is a process. All right, the next introduction of a motion today is the discussion around the HEC report and a new legislation that has been introduced to the state legislature that had a hearing. This motion and some of the comments that Provost Long made sort of speak to the legislation that's being introduced by several senators, a bipartisan group of senators and state representatives. So we have a lot of concerns about them. So just to back up a little bit, to give a little bit more context. So HEC produced this report on university efficiency that came out at the beginning of July. And I think someone will post that in the link to that report in beginning of January. I think someone will post a link to that report in the chat. And what it did is it looked at all of the Oregon public universities across the state on a set of metrics that they selected, and then made recommendations to those metrics at the end. Two of the recommendations really stand out. One, what the first recommendation was to sort of encourage collaboration and integration, which could potentially lead to integrating departments and programs across universities, as well as the potential for universities merger. And the second one, I think, which we're more concerned about, is the recommendation that the HEC be given authority to close or eliminate programs on their own, based on their own set of measurement criteria. From that study came a bill that was introduced last week that calls for another study, also done by HEC, to look at all of Oregon's community colleges and universities by December 1st on everything from research productivity to student success to economic development, and then provide some additional recommendations. And it became very clear in the hearing this morning on the bill that they do hope to introduce legislation in the next session, so in the 2027 long session, that may lead to state government intrusion in our autonomy and the autonomy of our other universities in the state. So although we don't oppose the idea of the study, the report and the legislation sort of sends a message that there is an interest in state intervention in our efforts, whether that be by HEC or the state legislature, including potentially unilaterally choosing to close our programs. In addition, the legislation would require that the HEC conduct a study of all of them by December 1st, which, as you know, if you know the performance auditing process in Oregon, they take a whole year to evaluate a single agency. So they want to do the entire higher ed system in the next 9 months here in Oregon. This bill would go into effect right after it's passed and signed by the governor. That's also written in the legislation. We've prepared a resolution today that affirms our role in the university's academic mission and also our concerns about the legislation. Although I had signed up to testify at the hearing this morning, they didn't have time to get to me, but you can view my public testimony, which is posted on the Oregon State Legislative Information page. And I'm going to post that in the chat for everyone. Can we get the motion up today? And that is what we're mainly discussing.
Yeah.
And Trent is also here to provide help answer questions and provide context. So, and we're getting the motion up in a second. The link I just posted was my testimony that I submitted earlier this week. I was hoping to share some of it in the meeting today, but they didn't have a chance to get to me, which was kind of a bummer. But as an aside, Trent has been working with all of the other OPUs, Oregon Public Universities across the state. And then this has also gone to the Interinstitutional Faculty Senate, who's also submitted testimony that you can also see online with the link that I shared with you. And I encourage them all to reach out to their individual senates to encourage more comment, and I'll get to that in a second. So this is the motion, and basically it just states some of the principles that Provost Long shared earlier, that these academic missions should reside with the faculty that have expertise and knowledge in those issues. It also sort of states the fact that Senator McKenna said earlier, which is that most of our academic programs are accredited in one form or another and go through regular and rigorous review in order to be able to maintain our accreditation. We also do internal review processes. Sorry, there's landscaping happening out my window. We also do internal review processes for the U of O. My department just completed our decennial review, for example. So if you go down through the whereases to the be it resolved that we oppose recommendation 2 in the report, and that we also want to exhibit caution. There's actually an updated version of this motion that I sent yesterday, Sandy, that had a couple more things about the legislation.
I agree. Hold on.
Yeah. We'll get you the right one in a second. But any other questions about this fast-moving process? I think my worry is that this will politicize our universities in ways that has not served other states well. Like, I'm just thinking, for example, like Texas and Florida, with significant government intervention in our processes and a curricula and planning and programming. It also could lead to the closure of our programs. Say the HEC decides that philosophy is better served, no offense, Provost Long, better served at Oregon State. Our students will have to move to Oregon State if they want to pursue a philosophy major. And that I'm not sure, it's not clear what would happen to the faculty in that process. So some of the concerns that we have, I will say that after listening to the hearing this morning, I'm actually more concerned about this legislation than I was before, because the bill kind of comes across as a neutral call for a study, but it seems very clear from listening to the testimony by the executive director of HEC and the sponsors of the legislation that there is an agenda here. And we need to be able to try to get ahead of it as quickly as possible. So we don't see destructive legislation introduced in the next session. So here's the actual motion that I would like everybody to review. So while we welcome this study, the bill is written in such a way as to potentially result in unnecessary external intrusion. The University of Oregon Senate strongly supports the idea that curriculum development and maintenance should be led by the faculty who are responsible for teaching the curriculum and whose scholarship underpins the knowledge related throughout the curriculum. That we oppose recommendation 2 of the report, and that we urge HEC to really exhibit caution when we're talking about developing a proposal of institutional integration by January 2027. So, and again, it's not clear exactly what they mean by integration. It could be anything from shared services to university mergers. So questions. So Senator Ramos-Cattrall.
Thank you, Diana. One quick question. Please forgive my ignorance. I don't know what type of jurisdiction do we have in terms of opposing the resolution, if it's possible or not, or this is a unilateral action that we can just frown upon. But my question is, regardless of what comes out of our opposition, is this likely to have an impact on the funding that we'll be receiving from the legislature?
No, and I think everybody that I've heard of has called for the fact that we cannot move forward to some of these changes without a serious attention to the structural problems that lead to us being one of the least invested higher education systems in the country. So my testimony speaks to that. The Southern Oregon University president who spoke this morning, his testimony spoke to that. Yes, I mean, I think these two things kind of have to go hand in hand, right? I don't know, Trent, if you have anything else you want to say about that.
I think all I will say is I think that there's intention versus reality here, and what I'll say is I think that the intention of the drafter of this and of many of the co-sponsors is believing that another study will build a framework which will then convince legislators that they need to invest more in higher education, that this is a trust building exercise in some way, shape, or form. You heard that in the testimony from a few of the legislators that talked about that, and definitely that has come up in multiple of our meetings. I think what they have not fully really recognized is the unintentional consequences of potentially recommendations that could truly undermine important and critical natures of our board authorities, their autonomy, our shared governance systems, and the work and the role that they play in these decision makings and the expertise that it takes to undertake these elements. And so we've tried to make that clear. We are offering language to hopefully amend that puts universities at the table, that better shapes to shape that autonomy, or to at least remove some of that language about programmatic review. Because you talk to the maker and the legislator, and they say, "Oh, that's not what this does, and it's not what it's going to do." But you can look immediately back to the HEC recommendations, and it's exactly what the HEC recommendations recommend. And so we can't, whether that legislator wants to ignore and try to untie those things, they can't. But I do think that legislators themselves think that this is a building block towards additional funds for universities, but it is definitely not tied directly to them.
Yeah, I think, Trent, that one of the things that Representative Marsh, the lead sponsor, said today was she wants to get this report done by December 1st so they could move fast next year. And as we learned from this past year, moving fast doesn't support shared governance, nor does it allow for strategic and thoughtful planning. So those are another one of the concerns. Senator Garcia Caro.
Yes, thank you for your deposition or your report earlier today for the legislature. I wanted to speak on behalf of the IFS, since I'm a member there, and we interface with the IFS with two of their commissioners last week, actually three, including our own UO commissioner at the IFS. And I was actually quite surprised at the sort of level of naivete that I perceived in their approach. They see this, much like Trent is describing it, as a goodwill expedition, somewhat, to understand the system better. Heck, so far, as you probably all know, has really only held true power, to continue with Provost Long's definitions earlier, over community colleges, right? And really, they are like the board of trustees to us of community colleges in the state. And, you know, for many of us, I think it's been overdue to have a statewide recognition of what the state of public education looks like in Oregon 10 years after the boards of trustees were incepted. So something along the lines of what at least two of the whereases of the legislation that has been put in place that claims that market competition between public campuses in the state of Oregon may be not very productive. It's something that I'm sure many of us are willing to agree on, that maybe more cooperation and more coordination is welcome. The methodology about, or the methodology that they want to incorporate in revising what they call duplication and efficiency is what I think most of us also find almost repulsive and passé. It's kind of as if the neoliberal language is coming back to try and shake up everyone and say, oh, it's duplicitous work, right? Teaching English in all campuses. Well, maybe not. Maybe everyone needs English in every campus or a second language, right? And so we really need to, unfortunately, many of our legislators in Salem need to come up to speed with what higher education actually looks like in the state of Oregon. Their lack of commitment is a shame. And they are now, I think, just trying to come to the table, but it's really this kind of hostile takeover mode is probably not the best approach. And that, I'm happy to support this motion, and I'm just trying to say that we shouldn't really conceive of any approach from the legislature or the state as hostile. That at some point we will need to, as a state, have to come together and think about how to boost our financing, how to coordinate the needs, the social needs of the state of Oregon to have X number of programs in X number of fields across the state, and how supported that can be. And that doesn't need to be seen as negative or centralizing necessarily. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Senator Garcia Caro. So any other questions on the motion? All right, so if you would like to speak out on this, the Committee on Education is accepting written testimony until Friday morning at 8 p.m. I'm going to put the link on where to do that. Everyone is, write to your own representatives, write to the chair of the committee, write to the sponsors of the bill. You can model your testimony on mine. It could be a couple sentences or a couple paragraphs or a letter. But we could definitely use your help in reaching out to the legislators around the state and letting them know that although this might be well-intentioned by some, it has the potential to lead to very drastic implications for our universities. Also, you can contact your representative directly by email or phone and share your thoughts and concerns about this legislation. Is there anything else folks can do, Trent, right now that may be helpful? Yeah.
Sorry, just coming off mute.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So the record will be open for the next 48 hours, and so we can send the link to be able to submit testimony. If folks want to put even just a few words, you can type it up right there on the system itself, or submit a letter. That just talks about the elements of what we need to make sure that we're protecting, especially the shared governance space, the autonomy of universities and the expertise of universities in those spaces. We are happy to share any phone numbers or other for folks, but if you have any relationship with any of the local legislators in your area or connections with folks, we'd love to try to help connect. I've shared with, and I just want to, number one, just say thanks to Diana, who's already taken a lot of time and energy on crafting testimony, on thinking through a position in a space. And I'm extremely disappointed the legislature in the committee did not have the time to hear from her or the other folks that we had, students from Portland State. We had board of trustees from Eastern Oregon. We had Diana from the University of Oregon, and tried to have voices from folks around the state and from different roles talking about the problems of this bill. And disappointed that the legislature is making these types of big considerations with very short with short timelines and short process. And so hearing from you all in different ways to make sure that there's an understanding of the true threats in the space, and that we're not afraid of having to be, of review and of study and of engagement on these issues, but it should be done thoughtfully, and it should be done in a way that is working with our universities and our community colleges to develop these ideas together and really share where the goals are. And it should be about what do we do to make things successful. It's not just about. I think that President Bailey said it well this morning when he said efficiency is a tool, it is not an outcome. And so that it's not the thing that we should be shooting for. And so that is the element that we need to make sure that we're not just trying to efficiency ourselves out of existence and giving so much control to a body that it would potentially impact some of the true fundamental natures of what makes a university, that allows it to have control over its academic programming, and to make sure that we are able to have that being decided by the folks that are on the ground, moving ideas forward. So.
Yeah, and thank you, Trent, for your partnership and helping kind of figure out how to best say what we want to say. So I appreciate your help too. Sandy.
Yeah, I thank you for giving me the floor. I don't often speak on a topic, but I just did want to strongly recommend that those who are able to watch the hearing from this morning, and I put the timestamp of when it starts to watch. because I do think hearing from the testimony specifically of the members of the legislature who are in favor of this, and from Ben Cannon, who is the executive director of HEC specifically, you will hear very clearly what the intent is, which is not necessarily reflected in the language itself. But when you hear what they are saying, I know that you all, as folks who care deeply about this university, will understand why it's so important to get engaged soon about this issue, because it is very clear what the intent is. And I just strongly, strongly encourage folks to, if you have the time, to watch that hearing from this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy, and I concur. Any other questions on the motion or next steps? We'll vote on this motion at the next meeting. If there is anything that happens between now and then, this bill is expected to be voted on by Monday, I think. It's a short session. Things are going to be moving really fast. So if there's any updates or things that action items that I might recommend, I might send out an email between now and the next meeting. And if folks are interested in following along more, just also let us know that you'd like updates. Committee will be voting on Monday. Yeah, thank you. All right, so we'll vote on that motion next time. Senator Addington.
If the legislature is voting on Monday and we're voting in a month, can our resolution have much effect?
Yes, because the next step after this study would be legislation that they would consider introducing. And we can still help shape this study, even because there's not a lot of detail in the resolution and the motion and the legislation on creating the study or calling for the study. So we can continue to help push to shape the outcome of the study.
Oh,
you know, things like actually speaking to our state, all the various stakeholders in our university communities that would be impacted by significant changes. So,
Thanks.
or could be impacted, yeah. Other thoughts or questions? And to Provost Long's comment earlier, it's clear that we need to be able to demonstrate the ability for us to rigorously review and make decisions about our curriculum. And I'm happy to say that the Senate the Oversight and Shared Governance Committee that Vice President Edwards is leading is trying to develop a process, or is in the process of developing a process that will allow more Senate and faculty involvement in program review, especially when we're thinking about closing a program. You'll learn more about that at upcoming meetings too. Well, can I ask you a question, Senator Addington? Were you suggesting that we might just want to vote this through today and suspend our rules?
Well, I'm only learning about this issue very recently, so I don't know.
Okay.
But
let's wait till the next time. It won't hurt. Yeah.
We could, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. I think, well, let's wait till the next, as the main sponsor, let's wait till the next time so we can see how this legislation unfolds. The next version of the motion you see might be different than what we saw today. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we move to our reports. I want to thank everybody for your attention so far. First, I'd like to welcome Abhijit Pandit, our Chief Information Officer, to provide an update on recent technology changes. And Abhijit, you now have the floor. Abhijit was supposed to join us last time, but there was a confusion with the dates. So he agreed to come back and join us this time.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me clearly. So my name is Abhijit Pandit. Easy way to remember that is Abby with a G. So Abhijit is right there. I'm the Vice President and CIO. So again, I'd like to thank the Senate President Mason for inviting me. And we had a pre-meeting about what are the main topics that the Senate, that she heard from senators that they wanted to hear about. And two topics came up amongst some others. And so it was decided at least I'll come this time and speak about two topics, which is around the storage changes that are happening and around my UO. And if in the future there are additional topics, I can always come back. So starting off with storage, and I think just in the interest of time, I'll try to be a little bit brief and fast. So just to understand the current context, obviously the amount of data that is being generated is growing exponentially, whether it is due to rise in unstructured data, improved resolution, rapid digitalization. So the amount of data that is generated is growing rapidly. Now, different parts and different within the organization have different needs. So one size fit all typically doesn't work. At the same time, vendors are seeing that the amount of storage that is being used is increasing. So they are now imposing either pretty stringent limits or they are exponentially increasing their rates whenever it comes to time for renewal. And this comes at a time when we know that the university and all the three missions are under financial pressures. So actively managing storage becomes even more important because if we don't, it becomes a strategic liability for the university, increasing costs, increasing risk, and slowing the organization down. So why should we do that? So obviously, reducing costs over the years, because every dollar that I can save or not spend in the future is a dollar that can be invested in some other part of the university. And so it becomes very important to ensure that I'm trying to be the best steward of the resources. It helps lower our legal risk, etc., because every byte stored can be an attack surface. Backups take longer if you have a lot of data. And so again, if you want to be more resilient, it kind of comes into play. If we have incorrect data, stale data, redundant data, then in the future, as we think more about AI, or if you think about analytics, etc., then those output garbage in, garbage out. And so that's another reason why you may want to clean. And from sustainability perspective, right, data has a carbon footprint, and every bit where we store, there is usage of power, cooling, water, etc. And so the more mindful we can be in this space, the better it is. So obviously, as we think about data storage and any changes, we want to be mindful about any operational impact. So our goal is always trying to find this balance between reducing or minimizing operational impact with being better financial stewards. So we wanted to optimize our suite of storage services based on the needs, ensure that we do responsible data management, have compliance with policies, but basically also keep an eye on the rising costs to ensure that we are not kind of escalating out of control in that spot. So for the past few years, we've been looking into different ways of approaching this. And beginning late last year, we started taking a series of steps. So first, we actually added a few things. So we actually added Dropbox back to as something that's available for faculty and researchers across the university. We also added research secondary data storage, which will hopefully help reduce some of the costs as well going ahead. And then we started looking at all our services as a storage platform, so Zoom, Dropbox, Microsoft, etc., to see what can we do to ensure that we are taking some common sense steps to help reduce our storage over time. And then as we have all these different tools, how can we make it easier for people to understand this landscape? So over the past few months, we've had all these different kind of notices go out from different channels, but the first couple have to do with letting the university know that, okay, we have Dropbox. Then we looked at Zoom recordings that were not being used, and we spent a fair amount of money on that. So we started automatically deleting Zoom recordings which are 90 days old, still giving people the ability to download them if required. Then we looked at Microsoft Exchange, and we noticed that when people deleted stuff, it went to your deleted folder, but the deleted folder never got deleted. And all that over the years still counted against our storage. So we said, okay, we probably should start cleaning those up as well. And so we started working on that. And again, those were all trying to go from lower levels of impact to slightly higher levels of impact. And so auto deletion of Canvas and Panopto is next, and we sent out notifications about that. And that's the area I'll speak about because that's a change that's yet to happen. So beginning on June 17th, Canvas courses which are 5 years or older will be automatically deleted. Panopto videos which have not been viewed for 5 years will also be deleted. And again, the intention is that it saves cost and it allows us to retain with the records retention policy. If there is need for this, there are ways that you can download both from Canvas as well as from Panopto into the different storage options that we have. So a little more detail about it. So Canvas course deletion will affect for courses from spring 21 or earlier, only 5 years or older. I think there will be a series of emails that will let people know that this course is going to be deleted. The first time we do that for the first term, there might be multiple emails coming in simply because it will be for all the terms. But going ahead, once that first term is over, it will be you'll get only one series per term going on. So that should hopefully make things much more easier. And again, if you need personal copies, there's an easy way to export it and save it for your own self. Similar with videos, I think we are currently the way is we move them from ready to view to archive if nobody's viewed it for over 2 years. And now after 3 years of being in archive, we'll just delete them. If there is a course which actually uses a reference copy, then we will not delete the original because of the reference copy having a connection to it, because you don't want to have a bunch of orphan courses out there. So if the original has passed 5 years and the reference copies haven't been touched in 5 years, that's when we will delete both of them. And we will be providing a dashboard where you can go in and see exactly which courses are last viewed, in case that is of interest to you as well. So in terms of communication, the first round of communication went out about the project in October. A second round is now going to be distributed by department heads. We'll also run a series of Canvas banner announcements. There is an FAQ, guides. Just go to service.uoregon.edu and search for deletion. It should be the first or the second hit that you would get. But if you have any question, always please do submit a ticket to either Canvas support service or just contact our help desk. Even if it is your desktop that has stopped working because of an BIOS update, please create a ticket. We'll definitely have somebody come over and look at it and hopefully help address it. And then the last thing I'd want to speak on this is we've created something called as a storage finder. So it allows you to go in and it gives you an option to ask you a series of questions. What's your affiliation? What kind of data are you trying to store? Do you want free data? What storage limits do you have? And then it helps identify what would be an appropriate platform for you to store that data in. It also allows you to just simply compare two platforms that are available to you. So I'll take questions right in the end. That way it comes connected, if that's okay. So hopefully this gives you a sense of what we're doing in the storage space, why we are doing it. And you can see that we are trying to be as mindful as possible to try to minimize the operational impact that folks may have. So the other part that I was asked to speak about was MyDuck or MyUO, which is the Duck Web replacement. You'll also hear the term Ellucian Experience. Ellucian is the name of a company. Ellucian has different products. Experience is just one of their products. The UO has taken Ellucian Experience and has now rebranded it to be said as MyUO. This is what in the old days, Ellucian also owns Banner, and the earlier version was Banner Self-Service. UO then decided to rebrand it and call it DuckWeb. So Ellucian Experience or MyUO is nothing but DuckWeb's newer kind of an iteration. So it's a one-stop portal. It has a lot of features. It can do notifications. It can integrate information from different systems. So even systems which are non-Banner or Ellucian owned. So for instance, your UKG or your timekeeping, etc. And it has a lot of additional functionality, which I'll talk to you about in a second. So what are the drivers? Why are we doing this? It's important to note, DuckWeb is really, 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 really old. Means there are comments about people having, over generations seen some version of it in some way, shape, or form. And the current version, which we had, DuckWeb, is no longer supported. Moving to the Ellucian Experience is what is their core strategy. It's supposed to be a one-stop shop, and it's meant to help streamline communication and engagement. You can imagine that in the future, that could be one place that many people, whether you are a student, faculty, or staff, can go in. And because it knows your affiliation with the university, it will show you these different widgets based on your persona. And so if you are a student, it can maybe show you ways of adding money to your duck bucks, or ordering food, or finding how many laundry machines are there, or scheduling an appointment with your advisor. If you are an employee or a staff member or a faculty, what's your vacation? How many days of vacation do you have remaining? How many sick days, etc. So there are many other things that can be included, and these are all customizable, so you can always mix and match or even delete the widgets if required. So what is changing is we are moving away from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. And hopefully you would not, after one more year, have to ever remember your pack ID. So if you love the pack ID, I'm sorry, but the hope is that you would just need your duck ID and that's it. So the timeline is simple. As you can imagine, there's a pretty big lift and shift. The focus was on getting some of the critical elements over because, again, this is not supported anymore. And so we were able to move things like view holds, financial aid, student registration, etc., and roll that out last year at the end of 2026. The entire year of 2026, we'll be looking at the remaining pieces from Duck Web to translate it over into MyUO. And once we've done all that work, we can then look at more customized cards, etc., which can be integrated at any point in time. So I'm sorry I went pretty quickly, but let me now pause for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Abhijit, so much. Vice President Davis.
Thanks, Abhijit. That actually clarified a couple of things that have been bothering me in the back of my mind. And the specific thing I'm thinking about is I do use a lot of videos in my teaching when I do flipped classes. And so I had noticed that when I would copy a class from one year to the next, the new class would not be charged the storage for all of the videos unless I re-recorded and uploaded new versions of the videos. And one of the things that's happened over time is that I now have in some classes video content that the total amount of space exceeds the amount that's allowed for a single Canvas class. And so I guess as long as I'm continuing to teach those classes and the earlier videos are continuing to be watched, even if the classes they're associated with are removed, those videos will still remain in the system. Is that's what I understood for you, and I guess I'm worried enough about it. I'm just asking for confirmation that that's correct.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, that is correct. And like I said, there will be a dashboard which will show you, hopefully, that we'll be releasing shortly, that your various courses, what's the last view time, so that you can also personally have that level of confidence that it's not going away.
Okay, and we've got a little bit more time before they're going to get deleted, so I'm going to maybe start downloading classes now. I'm just to make sure that I don't miss that deadline. The other thing I was thinking about was the way that the university's Dropbox system changed last year. I have a lot of data from my research that I've been storing on the university's Dropbox, and I have data related to the museum that I'm storing on the university's Dropbox. And because of the changes, my Dropbox for the university now says that I'm, terribly overcommitted in terms of the volume of data. But I've been assured that it's okay and that my data are safe in the university funded Dropbox. And I guess my question is there going to be a moment where those Dropboxes are like, are we gonna sunset University of Oregon Dropbox? Because I will need to figure out a different storage solution on campus before that. And the other concern I have about it is I just want to make sure there isn't going to be any blips where Dropbox does decide I'm overcommitted and starts wiping stuff without talking to me.
No,
Thanks, I appreciate it.
no, thank you so much for the question. So I'm going to address it in a couple of ways. One is hopefully there'll never be a case where we delete stuff without notifying folks. And so there should be enough opportunity for us to say, can we move it somewhere else? Can we pay some amount of money to ensure that that can be taken care of? So there are different ways to solve it, but deleting data is something that we don't automatically go to under any circumstances. To answer your question about Dropbox future, well, they were very unreasonable. So when you think about Dropbox as an environment, it's like we lease that space. We don't own the space. So we are not landlords. We are at the mercy of the landlords. And if the landlords are price gouging, we are kind of at their mercy. So Because we gave them the threat that we would move away, they came back with a much more reasonable, kind of a contract, which is why we said, okay, it's not an ego thing. We're trying to do what's right for the university. So we then went ahead and signed a 3-year contract. So at least for the 3 years, next 3 years, we do have it. If they come back again and are unreasonable, then we will evaluate it at that time. But again, it's very disruptive. So going back to my thing, we really try hard to reduce operational impact to the best of our abilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. That explains a lot. I appreciate your answer. Yeah.
Senator Addington.
Hi, sorry to talk so much today. This is the first time hearing about deleting old Canvas pages, and I have to say I'm sort of concerned about it. Um, and I wonder if it can be done so for example, in a more surgical way, I guess. For example, I teach Stat 243 with 500 students, and I teach it about once every 3 years, sometimes less. And I'm sure, all those students will snap a photo of their worksheet and upload it. And I'm sure that's taking up a ton of space, and I don't need to refer to that 5 years from now. But I might need to refer to their grades. And I definitely might want to be able to copy old quizzes, which I'm sure are taking up almost no space. And to have to download all that and figure out how to upload it back is going to be really a lot of work. Or to refer to an old course and want to see a project that a student submitted because um, I'm writing a letter of recommendation for an old student. I used to be in the habit of downloading all my students' grades and keeping them myself, and I can go back to that. But especially for copying an old Canvas site onto a new one, having old courses deleted is pretty worrying.
So I totally hear you, Senator, and I appreciate it. I wish we could continue just offering unlimited, but the costs that are increasing as well as with both Panopto and Canvas kind of asking for more money for storage is kind of forcing some of these decisions. 5 years is a fairly large period of time. That's one aspect. But more importantly, Canvas has designed itself in such a way that if you're a faculty member, you can easily, quote unquote, depending on your level of expertise, download a course. And if you go to a different university, upload it there as well. So it's by design, they've made it that you can easily download the full or part of your course or the courses that you teach. And so hopefully that can help you get all your course material out. If you have any concerns or if you run into any issues, please let us know and we'll have somebody work with you to ensure that it's done as seamlessly and smooth in a way that you don't lose any information that you feel you need it.
But the idea that I might be able to sort of mark this very bulky data as not important and that other data as smaller data as that's not practical?
It's unfortunately a lot of these settings are system-wide settings. So you say delete any course which is 5 years old. So you just go ahead and look at all the courses which are 5 years old, which doesn't have a reference to it, and then just kind of delete it out. So I think that's the ability to pick and choose doesn't exist, but I can have the team look into it. The safest way would be, in my mind, would be to download it and have your copy, which is always good hygiene, because whether you need it for professional reasons or some other reasons, that is always an option to have it in your control. And when you download it to Dropbox or to, OneDrive, it automatically gets backed up as well.
Thank you.
Great. Senator Pack, and you'll be the last question.
Okay, thank you so much. I was wondering if you could go back to a comment that you made about the possibility of a dashboard that lets faculty know upcoming deletion activity. Is this kind of up in the air? I'm on the LMS ASAB committee, and it seemed like I got to see an example of it with through Ben Brinkley today, and I thought, well, that gives me peace of mind. Also, in case anybody missed, I mean, Panopto videos after 2 years will go to archive, so there is a little bit of, it's not like just immediately you know in five years it's going to be deleted. There's a yellow light. You got the archive. And I've found that to be very helpful, that I'm looking for a video, it's not there. Oh, it's in archive. Pull it out of archive, and you're still good to go. any activity on the video keeps it available for another 5 years. So all those are nice. But the dashboard, that's the thing that where I would love to have a list of what are the videos or what materials are slated for upcoming deletion in this June. And I'm wondering if you could come back to that again.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Senator, for this question. And uh, the reason why I said what I said is pretty, I'm very, very fortunate to have an incredibly motivated and dedicated team who really want to do the most that they can. With Canvas, there are a lot of inherent features like automatically notifying faculty members, which does not come inherently with Panopto. So which means the team has to do some sort of magic behind the scenes in order to create this dashboard. The idea was to create a dashboard and then to share it with the group that you mentioned. It's been technically quite difficult. And we want to ensure that we get it right. We get the input in terms of, are these the right pieces of information? But there might be some piece of information that you all say that we want that and we won't be able to say. That's why that one is not as easy, and anything that the team is doing is really going above and beyond, because they really are trying to make this as easy as possible for the people who are going to be impacted by this. So I really appreciate you saying that you actually saw the version, because I know that we just created that. And so it is not vaporware, it actually does exist.
Yeah, I was one of the guinea pigs, so we tried it out and it was working very nicely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Abhijit, for your time today. I appreciate the update. All right, so next we have Senator and Budget Committee Chair Melinda Casement to provide an update on the work of the committee so far this year and the plans they are working on for the rest of this year. So Senator Casement, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Diana and Shannon. Can everyone see my slides? And okay, can you hear me all right? Okay. So Diana asked me to give an update on what the Senate Budget Committee has been doing so far. And this is I think I updated folks sometime in the middle of last term. And so this is an addition to that update. These are the meetings. So the background is that the goal of the Senate Budget Committee for fall term is really to set a foundation of information on the UO finances and the budget allocation process. And to that aim, we set up a series of meetings to learn about the UO finances and the budget allocation, as well as academic budgeting models. And these were the committee meetings that we had in fall term. They meet every other week. The meetings, in case anyone isn't aware, are public, so folks can attend if they would like. And the notes and recordings from the meetings are posted to the Senate Budget Committee website if you are curious. So we want to particularly thank our presenters, so Jamie Moffett and Brian Fox, and particularly Hal Sadowski, for giving detailed presentations on UO finances, budget allocation from the Office of the Provost, and Hal gave two really detailed presentations on the academic budget models with consideration of how budget models might change in the future. So this was our work from fall term. I would say that reflections from Senate Budget Committee on what we learned from fall term were one, that we really appreciated the information and the level of detail that was provided, and also that it was a lot of information. And even for those of us who were familiar, even for those on the committee who were familiar with, budgets and financial reports, that a lot to sift through. And so we're actively thinking, I think everyone who attended and presented is thinking about how to make that information more accessible. That said, from the meeting that we had last term, we actually had two proposals, which I'll talk about in a second, in a letter that was sent to Provost Long and President Schultz this morning. Before I get to the specific requests, this winter term, we have a number of additional topics and presenters that we are working to get scheduled. Hal Sadowski originally agreed to present on the 30th of January on what the recommendations of the academic budget model work group that he's been working with what their recommendations were. And pardon me, I'm getting over a cold and I feel like I'm struggling with keeping my thoughts in order and also speaking clearly. So anyway, Hal Sadowski had originally agreed to come on the 30th. Because of the national protests, we decided to cancel and move his presentation back to the 13th of February. And we're working to schedule a number of other presentations this term. And I'm happy to take questions or additional suggestions about that. But moving on to the two requests that we recently sent to the president and the provost this morning. The requests were one, to present. We asked the provost and the president to present and discuss financial contingency plans in the event of a budget deficit, which would allow for proactive Senate consultation about budget and personnel actions that impact you as academic mission. The rationale behind this is that there are typically three different scenarios that are presented to the Board of Trustees in the Senate in terms of UF financial planning. And if the worst of the financial projections is realized, it would be helpful to have an advanced discussion about what potential actions the university could take to address that budget deficit before the actions are imminent. So trying to avoid the rushed process that happened this past summer. So that was our first request. And then the second request was, there we go. That there be a presentation and discussion of the criteria, contextual factors, and metrics used to evaluate both the academic merit and financial sustainability of units and programs, including a mid-year report card for university units and programs. The goal of this was to allow for more transparency in the criteria that are being used, for example, student credit hours and number of majors, as well as discussion about what those criteria are, academic priorities, and then allowing stakeholders to make decisions with those criteria in mind. And we had some nice examples of this during the delivered to the Senate Task Force on Budget Reductions this past summer, including presentation of data for different units by Chris Paulson, Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, and Dean Madison Cannon, Dean of the College of Music and Design, music. I mean, it's just music. So apologies for not remembering the specific unit. So those, I would also be happy to take questions about these two requests to the provost and the president. And then we also have a slate of other potential topics and speakers for spring term, building on the two requests. We hope to have either this winter term or early spring term those presentations and discussions on academic contingency planning and the criteria and metrics for academic merit and financial sustainability. We are also interested in hearing more about funding and development from the deans about allocation of funds to units after they receive funding from the Office of the Provost, enrollment planning, and purchasing and contracts. So that is the the overview, and I'm happy to take questions if there is time.
I think we have time for maybe one question, but in the chat, I included a link where members of our community, not just senators or committee members, can submit questions to the budget committee or ideas. So that is now in the link. Any questions for Senator Casement? Or a question for Senator Casement? I want to thank Senator Casement for working really hard to help arrange for the presentation of a very complex situation with the university's budget, where the money comes from, where it goes to. And I'm looking forward to continuing those conversations. Right, thank you. Okay, so if you do have questions, you can use this link or ask.
Dan, you muted yourself.
I did. All right. So last, we have Mark Schmeltz, UO's Chief Human Resources Officer and Vice President, along with Kaya Rogers, Chief of Staff and Senior Director of HR Programs and Services, to share with us the upcoming launch of the Employee Engagement Survey, which launches on February 23rd. This was talked about a little bit earlier, but we actually had invited them to come and share some more information with all of us. So Mark and Kaya, you now have the floor.
All right, thanks so much. What I want to do is just very briefly kick things off, and then Kyle share a little bit more detail. A lot of you might remember in 2022, the university did a campus-wide climate survey that was administered by the Division of Equity and Inclusion. That was, we thank our colleagues in DEI for launching what was the first effort to really broadly survey the campus community. Following that survey, the work transitioned to HR to get ready for the next survey, which is coming up at the end of this month. To do that, we actually gathered a lot of feedback from the prior survey, including from academic units. Actually, our colleagues in the Division of Equity and Inclusion shared some feedback of their experience. We also, you'll note, we're launching an engagement survey. The purpose of that is actually based on the feedback. And if we can go to slide 4, that'd be awesome. The purpose is to actually, lots happened since 2022. Again, we got all sorts of feedback about the prior survey. And really, with Oregon Rising launching and a focus on flourishing, we have 3 goals for this survey. It's to focus on flourishing and assess flourishing and the domains of flourishing, which are growth, well-being, resilience, community purpose. It's to assess employee engagement broadly, and to follow up on key elements from the 2022 survey. Importantly, this is not a climate survey. We're pivoting away from that to be more focused on engagement with its ties to flourishing as a goal. And also with that pivot, we actually believe the results will be increasingly actionable across campus and lead to really, really productive conversations in units as you all look at your results and reflect on those. We'll also be able to have some university-wide conversations about the results and what they're showing reflective of the community. I'll hand it over to Kaya to actually share a little bit about the details of the survey, but I want to point out that engagement can be a frightening term to some if you don't know what that really means, or you have questions about it. And really, what it is a commitment to an organization, a measurement of commitment to an organization, and it's reflected in behaviors or efforts in work, positive impact individuals have on themselves or those around them, individual and group productivity and the sense of community and belonging that they bring. So really has some nice ties to flourishing. And really, faculty, I've heard questions from time to time, how do faculty, how does engagement relate to faculty and their work? And really, you can see it in the productivity around scholarship and creative works. Faculty being reflective about their teaching and engagement with students, and actively doing work within departments, schools, and colleges to look at practices and create positive change with their colleagues. And so we believe the term engagement actually has broad applicability across the institution, regardless of employee group. So Kai, do you want to dive a little bit into the specifics of the survey?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mark. If we could advance to the next slide, please. I'll give a very abbreviated version of this, knowing that at the end of the presentation, I have a QR code included that leads to the Measuring Engagement website, where a lot more detail about the survey is located, so that you could always obtain more information there as well. But for those of you who are here in 2022 for the climate survey that Mark referenced, you may recall that we partnered with Gallup to administer the survey for us. And we are again going to partner with Gallup and base our 2026 employee engagement survey off of Gallup's Q12. And really, the important thing I want to highlight here is that we are in very good company in making that decision to use Gallup's Q12 as the basis of our survey. It's highly tested, widely used across the world, over 57 million respondents to this particular measurement, including in higher education, where there are 44 R1 institutions that are currently using the Gallup Q12, as well as 37 AAU institutions. And so by using and partnering with Gallup, we then benefit from being able to have access to comparator data within higher education and R1 institutions in particular, as well as the broad scope of respondents that Gallup has in their pool. On the next slide, this is a snapshot of Gallup's Q12, just to give you a sense of what those questions look like if you're not familiar with them. We did ask many of these questions in the previous survey, not all of the questions. We are going to ask all of the questions on the screen in the upcoming survey. We'll also have about 10 additional questions beyond what you're looking at on the screen, and some demographic questions, which for those of you who are here in 2022 are very similar to what was asked in that survey as well. One thing I want to call your attention to is in our process of having conversations with many units, leaders, individuals, schools, colleges, faculty, staff, etc. One of the things that we received consistent feedback on was the fact that it was unclear to respondents who or what level some of the questions were referring to or were being asked to respond about. And so we took that feedback and were able to work with Gallup and make some small adjustments to the questions to add more clarity and without sacrificing our ability to get comparator data. So an example of that, there's actually two examples I'll share on the screen. So question 00, how satisfied are you with your organization as a place to work? And question 08, the mission or purpose of my organization makes me feel my job is important. That is an example where the word organization, we were told, was confusing. Does that refer to my department? Is it my school or college? Or is it the university as a whole? And so in those two questions in particular, we have switched out the word organization and instead are going to use the word institution, hoping that then is more clear that we're talking about UO as a whole in those questions. And we are also including some instructions or definitions in the beginning of the survey that again will help clarify that, so people have the right framing, when they're starting to take the survey. So, thank you to those of you Some of you in the room may have participated in providing that feedback, and again, we're just happy that we're able to clarify that and remove that barrier for employees who are taking the survey. On the next slide. So to give you an idea of the timeline of what you can expect, as Diana stated, the survey will open on February 23rd, and it will be open through March 9th. You can expect to begin to see results being broadly shared. There was a question about this in the chat earlier. There is an intention to share the results broadly, and that will start happening in mid to late April. And then in May and June is when units will then be engaging with faculty, staff, all of our employees to share the data, to have discussions and begin the action planning process and identifying what are the 2 or 3 specific action items that each unit will commit to working toward over the next 12 months or so. And then there is an intention for the next engagement survey to happen in 2029. Next slide, please. I just wanted to illustrate for everyone who will receive an email invitation to complete the survey on February 23rd. For those of you who may be wondering, our UO student workers are not included in our employee engagement survey, and that is because there is another group on campus that has worked on a survey that is specific to students. And so, of course, they will be included in that. And so at this time, they're not being included in our 2026 engagement survey, but they do have an opportunity to provide feedback in the student focus survey. Next slide, please. A couple of, just kind of logistical details about the survey. As Provost Long stated earlier, it is shorter than the previous survey. We're anticipating it will take less than 20 minutes to complete. And there will, in order for the data to generate a report, there will need to be at least 5 members of a department or a unit that respond. If there is less than 5 in a department or unit that respond, then their data will not show, we will not show individual responses. Their data will then instead roll up to the next level and be compiled with a larger group of individuals. So nobody at University of Oregon is going to see individual responses. We're only going to see aggregated responses sent to us from Gallup. Next slide, please. So you could use this QR code, or I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. You can go to our Measuring Engagement webpage, where we have more information about engagement. We've got FAQs posted there, and we have the survey questions themselves already posted there, just in the spirit of being fully transparent. So if anybody wants to take a look at those in advance, you can go to this website and review them. We're right at 5 o'clock. Diana, it's up to you if we have time for a question or if we should end.
I think we should probably wrap up. Folks will start rolling off any second. But if you do have questions, can maybe you drop your email in the chat box for folks so they can follow up with you?
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, so just a couple final pieces of business. So it is now time for the notice of motions. Senators, are there any motions for which you would like to provide notice for consideration at our upcoming meetings? Okay. Finally, it's time to close our meeting with an adjournment. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second.
Seconded.
Great. Without objections, the meeting is adjourned at 5:01. Thank you, everyone. So have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everyone.